Fee, fi, fo, fum. Welcome to the haunted edition of Gaming Banter with David and Ryan.
He's swinging the axe.
We have the Big D.
Banter.
He'll steal your children.
My tagline. I'm gonna touch your children. Their hearts.
And Derek.
I'm an evil hipster lumberjack. You can see the glint of light off my shiny axe.
That's all you can see.
That's all you can see, because my camera sucks.
Here we have Sunday.
Oh, I'm Princess Peach. I'll bite you.
You say I'll bite you?
No, I could, you know.
Whoa! And I'm Ryan the Troll. Anyways, this week we're going Halloween themed to talk about scary games of our past and maybe the scariest games that we've ever played and just argue about that and stuff. But so let's go ahead and start with David. And David, what games scared you the most growing up?
Well, there's kind of a split. I think I liked I think I kind of have three. Well, we'll see. Okay, so I really like the opening of BioShock, the first one, when you go down the little chute and then the splicer comes and is like attacking the glass and trying to get at you, and then scampers off, and then the door opens up, and you're checking all your buttons to see if there's some way you can equip a weapon you didn't know you had, but you don't have any weapons or abilities. And I hadn't really played the game. Like I was just told it was a good game, so I didn't know if it was a survival horror or a stealth game or what. So there's like light, and I'm trying to avoid going in the light because I'm like, maybe he'll see me and attack me. I don't know what my objective is here, so I was just scooting around the outside of the room, hoping he wouldn't come back. And so that was a good sense of like danger for my life there. And then there's one game called Realm of the Mad God. It's not really meant to be a scary game. It's just a permadeath game. And so you'll like be trying to go in to get like equipment from like a big boss raid thing and stuff like that. And you'll think you're saving. You're, oh no, something aggroed me, and you're like running, and then you die, and your level 30, like 2 or 3 hour character is dead. And you like panic because there's so much relying on getting out of that situation. But then overall, scary game that I've played is the Amnesia Dark Descent, and I'll say that's the scariest one. And it's meant to be a scary game. And I'm gonna switch masks. So it's meant to be a scary game, and but yeah, and I like it because the fear in the game affects the character that you're playing. So when things that kind of scary, he'll start to like shake, and your camera will shake, or your ability to control him is limited, and he'll do it like a cower, I guess, because your camera will start to turn to the left and down, and you're just like, what is going on? And your whole camera is tilting down, and he's like getting closer to the ground, and you're like, is he crawling on the ground? What on earth is this guy doing? So like you can kind of tell him to go left and right and stuff, but he's also making some of his own terror decisions. So that's what I like that game. Really I don't tend to get really scared by things, particularly like games. But you know your objectives, you know what you're trying to achieve, and you know that the fear is affecting you, even though the fear is kind of just his fear. But it becomes your fear because you're like, oh no, if I get too near that monster, I'll become afraid. I need to avoid him. I'm worried about being near him. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Haven't you played that game too, Sunday?
Yeah, I actually really love Amnesia, and I'm going to be doing their latest game, like the Bay of Pigs, next. I'm really jumpy, and so what is effective for me is a game that can get you really involved, but then have stuff pop out. And so I will always scream and jump. It's like just natural. So I like the way that Amnesia sets up this like perfect environment for you just to be like, like you'll see a piano, and then 2 seconds later you're in another room and the piano's like making a noise, and you're just like, nope, no. And also that game has, I think, the scariest like challenge of any game that I've ever played, and it's what's called like the water level or the water. And so there's something that's just skipping on the water to get you every time they hears a sound, but you can't see it. and it's like extremely fast and so
It's not skipping on the water, it's walking in the water, but it's invisible. It's its little footprints in the water.
yeah, yeah. It's like you just hear the and
But
then
he'll
like
only come after you if you're in the water, so you have to jump from box to box, but sometimes there's no boxes, and you have to run across.
if you get in the water, like it'll kill you. It's like just a basic, almost kid-esque concept, but it's just terrifying. You have to like do all these errands while you're on these wee little boxes in this water. It's just so scary. I love that game. I recommend it. Yeah.
So, in general, I don't do well with scary games. I enjoy scaring people, but I don't do well with scary games. And one game that terrified me whenever I was younger was Doom. Not the original Doom, the one on Xbox 360, where basically it was just a bunch of dark alley or dark things, and you're just having things like chop you into a million pieces while it's dark. And there's nothing you can do about it. And that game just terrified me, and I had to stop playing it, just in general. And I don't know, probably most recent memory would be Slender the Eight Pages.
Yeah.
It's a game that really spawned a lot of awesome things. And I don't know, I've watched a lot of people play that game, and it's just like the amount of fear, and it's really simple to actually beat if you know the like way you're supposed to do it. It's just not, yeah. I don't know. It's just creepy, and like, he just appears in front of you. And like recently, we went into a haunted house, and there was like a Slender Man sitting there, and I was just like, "Hey, that like it was a highlight of my haunted house experience." So I will say that. But yeah. What about you, Derek?
Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth. I have to mention a number of games, but I'll do so briefly. I want to focus on Call of Cthulhu. I have to mention a number of games just for horror fans out there, because there's so many good ones. But the reason Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth was so awesome was the game has... The thing that makes Amnesia frightening, for example, is essentially the game developers are really good at making you feel powerless. Like, you can't fight back against the monsters. Sometimes you can't see the monsters. And when you can see the monsters, you're not supposed to look at them because it'll drive you crazy. So you have to go hide in a dark hole somewhere and hope that you don't die horribly. And the entire gameplay experience, you feel completely helpless to deal with all of these things that are around you. The thing that's fun about Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth is it's really it's that feeling of helplessness, because you spend the vast majority of the first part of the game without weapons. It is a shooter, but it's a shooter for which 3/4 of the game you don't have a gun, which is really entertaining. And the other part of it is it's very investigatory, and you have a lot of you're basically playing as a private detective. And
Drake.
no, not Drake. You start the game off in like this insane asylum, and there's this kind of cutesy big band jazz music playing in the background, and you're kind of floating down the hallway of this insane asylum, and you hear like people screaming and stuff, and it's not a big deal, and until finally you get to this room, and inside is the character you're gonna play, and he's like scribbled stuff all over the floor. I mean, kind of your traditional like horror story, insane asylum motifs. He's like written stuff on the walls in blood, but he's basically talking about how he ran into something that basically has caused him to sort of give up on life, and that's sort of like the opening scroll of the game, where he talks about essentially how it's more it's better to not know things and live in ignorance than to understand the full horror of what's out there in the universe. And that's what the game is about. It's this journey of discovery where you're finding out why it's horrible to be alive, and it's awesome. I could go into greater detail, but that's kind of the general idea.
That reminds me of a board game that like we played for a long time called
The Game
Arkham
of Life.
Horror.
Arkham Horror, yes.
Yeah, and it's just like I remember playing that game, and you had to roll a dice to see if you basically would go insane and be terrified and run away.
Yeah.
Like, can I actually attack this monster, or is it too hideous and crazy and unreal that I'm gonna die just by looking at it? And so I remember playing that game, and we would go on what was called the boys' house walks, where we would just walk around the neighborhood really, really late at night, and like I kept on imagining that these monsters would like pop out from like behind this dark, dark house, and like I'd have to pass a check to make sure I didn't get terrified and go running away. And let's just say that sums up my life at that particular moment. It was just constantly passing horror checks. And there weren't even monsters there. I was just terrified of.
Well, we would discuss what it would be like if like Cthulhu or like an old world like god type creature like attack like came through the sky like as big as a city coming out of the sky, like how we would plan our survival attempt. It would be rough.
I think that things that tend to scare me, not necessarily in the games that I've played, just having to be that very physical response to something popping out. And it's pretty rare that I get like creeped out in a way afterwards where I'm like watching my back and stuff. I feel like that happened a little bit with Amnesia, where it just like things are really creepy and you're on your toes so much the whole time that when you're done playing, you're kind of like, it's dark and scary here. So, yeah, I appreciate something that can scare me on a much deeper level than just pop out stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really like games that have really memorable moments too. Like I think that's the reason I like Call of Duty Dark Corners so much, because like you go into you're this private detective, and so someone of course hires you to investigate the disappearance of a person. So you go to this town called Innsmouth, and you show up and you start talking to people, and the first thing you notice is people are really weird looking. Like, you walk up to these guys, and they've got kind of like these frog-like eyes that bulge out of their heads, and they're creepy looking. They talk weird, like with this kind of like almost wet, soppy accent. That's the best way I have of describing it. And they really hate your guts. Like, everybody you talk to is like, get out of Innsmouth. You're not welcome here. Why is this outsider? They keep calling you the outsider. Like, why is this outsider here? What's he doing here? Get out. And as you're wandering around town, you just get this increasing sense of something is wrong in this town, and it's not just like regular wrong. It's like supernatural, really creepy, strange wrong. And finally, you go back to the bus that came into town, and you're like, I need to get out of here. I need to leave. You go talk to the bus driver, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, the bus won't be leaving until tomorrow. You can stay the night in the hotel. I mean, that's really how he talks. And so you go into the hotel, and you walk up to the guy who owns the hotel. You get a room, and you bunk down for the night. You fall asleep, and you wake up to the sound of people walking up the stairs. You're like, what's going on? Why are there people walking up the stairs coming towards my room? And so you get up, and my instinct, I noticed there was a bolt on the door, so I shut the bolt. And it's like, man, I better make sure nobody can get in here. And all of a sudden, these guys, like literally, it's appropriate to have an axe, because an axe plunges into the door, and you're like, ah, what's happening? And these guys start busting down the door to your room. And so you have no guns, no way of fighting back. And so what you do is you spend the next literally 3 to 4 hours of gameplay fleeing from these guys as they're chasing you throughout the town. And it's terrifying. Like, the whole time, you have no way of dealing with them. And I think that hotel scene where you run from room to room, barring the doors behind you and pushing like armoires in front of the door so that they can't get in, is one of the most memorable chase scenes I've ever experienced in a video game. I was terrified and screaming and running away, and my roommates came into the room and like, what's happening? And I was like, ah! And it was awesome.
I just want to say that I don't think I could handle that game. I would have a heart attack.
It's great.
It would scare the living daylights out of me. Pretty much.
Wait till you play Dead Space, man. There's some great moments in that game. They're beautiful.
So what about you, David? What's your next big scary game that you're going to play?
That's a good question. I don't play a ton of scary games. I am interested in the new Descent, the Bay of Pigs. Bayo Pig?
Bayo Pig.
Is it loosely based on Beowulf?
Sounds like a mayonnaise brand or something.
No, it's a sequel to Beowulf.
Oh,
it's about a pig
I don't think
instead
it
of a
is.
wolf.
Yeah, I'm excited to play that too. And followed by my like 3 rules of playing a horror game, which I wrote about. Like, you can't have the lights on. You can't have anyone like backseat driving if they're gonna watch a game. Like, they can't participate and like go there, go there. And then the third one is you have to have an energy drink so that your like heart
Extra jumpy.
makes it like twice as bad. And so I'll get like a big energy drink, and I'm gonna turn all the lights out and play it. I think probably sometime this week whenever I have like a free night.
That's kind of how we did Dead Space. Like, I was the only one in my suite in college who played horror games, and my roommates were too terrified to play Dead Space, but they would watch me. And like, so they would just sit back there and not say anything. And we would get up at like midnight and start going through Dead Space, and we would all scream and clutch each other and cry, and it was awesome.
Yeah. A beautiful moment.
Yeah, it was a real bonding experience.
I think it's kind of fun sometimes when a game that's not even meant to be a horror like scares you. Like, my one scariest story ever is playing World of Warcraft, like really late at night in the dark. There's nothing scary in this game. Just, it's not intended to be scary in any way, other than stressful, which is different. And so I was, I don't know, on some quest in the water, and I had gone out pretty far, and there was just no indication of anything. Volume full up. I'm trying to find something, and out of nowhere, like, this massive whale creature that's making some kind of whale noise just like goes right above me, and it's like one of the most scared pop out moments I've ever had. Like, I jumped and screamed, and like it was terrifying, and it was World of Warcraft. Like, how could this be? It took me a moment to like recover myself. But I should also preface this with whales freak me out in general. Like, they're too big. And they can just do whatever they want.
They're bullies.
They're bullies of the ocean.
So what you're saying is you didn't like Shamu.
No, actually killer whales scare me so much. They have like teeth and stuff. They're not even just gonna bump you in the ocean. Like, they'll rip you up.
They're gonna eat you. Yeah. It's true.
I know all about whales. They eat people. They're fun, so.
Yeah, I just don't have a very good track record with scary games. I really want to play Slender: The Arrival, which is the new Slender game. Because the first one was just like, kind of it's a free game that you can play anytime, and you just literally go out and you collect 8 pages, and you're walking like you're a little kid, and so you're walking around, and you have a flashlight, and so you're just kind of walking. You can run for a couple steps, but then you get tired because you're a little kid, and so then you're collecting these pages, and like the pages are just creepy, and what happens is after you collect so many pages, Slender Man starts appearing in different places. So like you turn around and like he's just standing there. He doesn't move. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there, and then like. You're really creeped out, so you start walking the other direction, or some people like get really scared, so they like whip back to the other point of view and start running, and then they like turn around to see if he's there, and he's closer, and so like every time you turn around, he gets closer and closer and closer until he just grabs you, and then turns you around, and then like all you see is his blank face, and makes some loud noises, and that's the end of the game, and you have to start over again. And the new one looks even cooler because they did a lot of updates to the graphics and stuff like that. So I'm excited. I really want to play it.
At that haunted house, they should have had it because there was Slender Man, and then you had to go through that room into the next door, and then they should have had it where there was a Slender Man on the other side of the door, and he like opens the door. You're like, oh no, he's right there. But they didn't do that.
That would have been really cool. Like if they did multiple Slendermans, or like I remember at that haunted house they had who was it? Was it Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he like had that little light that like went on, and then he turned it off, and it was like completely pitch black, and you couldn't see anything. And I think the point was he was supposed to be like turning on the light and then scaring you, and then turning off the light and then getting closer or somewhere else, and like he just appears different places in the room. But he didn't do that. Instead, he just turned it off and kind of, did weird things.
They're weird things.
I had an experience.
Oh my god.
I'm never going back.
Show me on this doll where they touched you, Ryan.
I don't want to talk about it.
Interesting.
More than you bargained for at the haunted house.
I have all these. So we went to the haunted house, and I have all these dreams about how I'd make a haunted house, including what I wanted is to have like plainclothes actors like blend in with the crew, and so every group has like a couple blended in with them, and then so you see some guy and you make them loud so you notice they're there. They're talking. They're like, I'm not gonna be scared, and so they say stuff so people notice they're there. And then when your group has to go through, they've peeled away from their group at some point, and then you have to make a decision to get through the haunted house. You have to pull a lever. But then the guy from you saw from the group before, he's like chained to a wall, and he's like, "Don't pull it; it'll pull me apart." But you have to do it, so you pull a lever, and it pulls his arms off, but they're fake arms. But you in your mind, you wonder, what if I was wrong?
What if it was real?
I think they need to make you make decisions in haunted houses.
Yeah. That's just like horror in a different way. Not being scared, but like making horrible choices. Like things that irk your soul, I suppose.
So you have to worry after you left. I mean, it was all a joke, right? But that guy from our group disappeared after a while. We couldn't find him, but he just peels off to go and be the next guy. So you always actually lose members of your group.
Oh my god.
Oh, that'd be good too.
They did a study on that. And like what they did is they put this other person that was like an actor in the other room, and they hooked him up to like these electric shock therapy things. And so every time he answered, like people would come in, they'd explain the situation. It's like, okay, every time you get an answer wrong, you have to press this button, and that button shocks the person in the other room. And so they would do it, and then the person in the other room would act like he was getting shocked. And like some people like just didn't care. They just kept on pressing the button every time they got it wrong. And other people were like, I don't know. But only like, I think 2% of the people that did the study stopped. Or, this it becomes lethal if you press it, but, you keep answering the questions wrong, so you just have to keep pressing it. But
they weren't getting anything for answering them right or wrong. They just continued this fast. Jerks.
Just keep pressing the buttons. What were you going to say, David? Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying they weren't even getting anything for answering the questions right. They were just continuing the test for no reason. But yeah, I think it would be interesting. And then I think that the FBI can keep track of who like have no emotional response when they pull the lever, and then we know who the killers are.
Imagine you're the tester, like who's doing that study, and somebody walks up to you afterwards and is casually like, "Hey, you need somebody to do that again, huh?" And you're like,
I didn't quite finish.
That's weird.
That was just fun.
I need to call the cops now. Excuse
me. Give us your home address and we'll contact you.
Yeah.
Now, one game that I really wish that they would make is kind of like what we were just talking about Arkham Asylum, like something that's like Cthulhu based. And I mean, maybe that's a game that you were talking about. I haven't heard about it, Derek, or I haven't played it rather. But if it was like a real world Cthulhu type invasion, and there's like monsters coming out of like different things, and like kind of mix some elements of Slender in there, and then also like just rampaging monsters that you have to pass a horror check to not go insane. I think would be fun.
That's what Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth turns into. Like you basically have to stop. You have to stop the deep ones from basically rising up and consuming the Earth. It's great. Oh gosh, it's so good. There's my favorite moment in the game is like the cool thing is if you read a lot of Lovecraft, I'm a huge Lovecraft fan, and so I've read like all of his fiction and stuff. And what they do is they pepper that throughout the game. And the one that they keep mentioning, they mention this one monster that Lovecraft made up called the Flying Polyps, and the name sounds kind of dumb, but they go into all these descriptions about the Flying Polyps and how horrible they were and how they destroyed like many civilizations, blah blah blah, and finally this other race sealed them beneath the earth where they will never escape from, and so they're trapped beneath the earth, and they kind of describe these grates that sort of cover the places where they're sealed, and then they also describe how they have these three-toed footprints. And at one point, you're probably 3/4 of the way through the game, and you're wandering along, and you've got all your machine guns and stuff, and you're fighting aliens and monsters, and you go through this manhole. It looks like a manhole cover, and you climb down, and you're standing on this sandy bridge over this enormous chasm, and you have to walk to the other side of the bridge to get to the other ladder and go up. And you take a couple steps, and you look down, and there's this series of three-toed footprints. And you're sitting there and you're going, not and you're swearing. I swore a lot. Like, there was a great deal of profanity because I was terrified. Because these things are immortal. You can't really kill them except with this special lightning gun. And so if this thing shows up, I'm dead. And so ever so slowly, start creeping across the bridge, like looking around, and it's completely quiet. And they're like, you can always tell when the flying polyps are coming because there'll be this violent scream and a whirlwind. And I'm like, okay, it's completely still and calm, no problem, no problem. And you take this step, and a rock dislodges from the wall and bounces off the floor and makes a crapload of noise, and you stop. You look around. And then the whirlwind starts up, and you go, ah! And you run and scream, and the flying polyp comes flying up from the chasm and tries to devour your soul, and it's good.
Oh my god, my palms are sweating.
It's one of the best. It's one of the best scenes in any horror game. There's one in Dead Space that I'd love to talk about, but you're going to play it, and I don't want to ruin it for you. It will terrify your pants off.
That happens. That tends to happen.
I'm so excited.
Is this Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth? Is that the game you're talking about?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because it had no press when it released. Pretty much everyone I've talked to who played it was like, wow, this is the best game ever. But because it got no press releases when it came out, no one even knew it existed. And it just kind of died a sad, lonely death off in the corner alone.
It looks like it came out in 2005.
Yeah, it was originally on the Xbox, the old Xbox.
Do we have an article on it on the page?
Yeah, it's
UltimateGameDatabase.com.
Surprisingly, it's in the database. I was shocked to find it in there because no one's heard of it. But I think it's on Steam now. I think it's on Steam. If you can work with your computer,
on Steam.
You should totally. If you're a horror fan, people who might listen to this video, if you are a horror game fan, play Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth on easy, because the primary game mechanic sucks. It's a shooter. It's a terrible shooter. Don't play the game because you're looking to play a shooter. Play it because it has the most scary, awesome storyline ever. It's so much fun. Anyway.
And it's based on the Lovecraft mythology.
Yeah.
Cthulhu.
It does a very good job. It basically combines Shadow Out of Time and Shadow over Innsmouth, those two stories, and it kind of squishes them together and makes them awesome.
So we've got a couple minutes left, so we're going to do everybody's scary game that affected them most. And we're going to start with me, because I haven't given everybody else a chance. So for me, I'm going to go with Slender the 8 Pages, because I mean that's the one I talked about before. Just because it's really cool. It spawned like a ton of different, let's play videos where people play through it, and there's some funny ones where there's a guy. I think who was it that played it that we were watching? He's really famous on YouTube.
PewDiePie.
Yeah, I think PewDiePie was playing it. And he did an awesome job with that. So look up PewDiePie's video, and there's also a Bane plays Slender the 8 Pages. Bane from the recent Batman movie, and that one's pretty funny too.
That's gotta be awesome.
So if you haven't seen that, you should watch it. But yeah, how about you, Sunday?
I will say Amnesia: Dark Descent. I think I like supernatural horror and versus just zombies or whatever getting you, and so you always feel not in control, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so I don't think anything so far has topped it for me. But I'll see about their new game too, and see which one I like better. But it's a perfect premise. You wake up, you're in a castle that's really scary. Why did they build it like this? And then you just have to solve all this nonsense, all the while being chased by horrible things initially you can't see and whatever else. It's perfect. Perfect game to play if it's thundery outside or dark. So yeah, that's my game of choice.
Derek.
If I had to pick most influential, I'd probably go with Alan Wake. It's not the scariest game, but it has a really compelling storyline. It's more of a dark game than a horror game. But one of the most scary things that's ever happened to me in a game, the game is about a writer named Alan Wake, and Alan Wake basically his wife disappears, and so for some reason he gets trapped in this room and he writes a book, and then he loses the pages of the book, What he discovers as the game goes on is that the pages of the book are coming true. They're happening. What he wrote is happening in real life. And as you go through the game, you find these pages. Well, one of the pages you pick up, they sort of foreshadow events that haven't happened yet. And you start reading about this guy, like, and then Alan was walking through the woods, and suddenly he heard the rev of a chainsaw. And you're like, chainsaw? I haven't met anyone with a chainsaw. That sounds bad. And it's like, and then he burst out and chopped a bunch of people in half, and you're like, that sounds really bad. And so you're like wandering along, being really careful, trying not to get killed by a guy with a chainsaw, and like there's this building sense of menace as you're walking through the game. And when the guy with the chainsaw finally shows up, you're so frightened of his potential menace that it's all the more terrifying. And it was one of the most memorable moments in the game for me, was that build-up.
Very cool. What?
It's the bewitching hour.
What about you, David?
Scariest game. I think I'm gonna go with, even though I like this Dark Descent a lot. I was playing it actually. I played it the most for that segment we were trying to film that we need to rework. But so I had people watching me and stuff, and so it wasn't as like intense because like it was in a well lit environment and there was a camera on me.
And that's the end of David's.
But
Wait,
Oh,
what?
oh,
What's going on?
did it cut off? Am I frozen?
You're alive.
You're okay.
Am
sorry.
I frozen?
Back to you, David.
Okay.
You're good.
But yeah, BioShock, when you first get out of the pod, that was because I didn't know what the game was about. I didn't know what the gameplay was going to be. I hadn't been told, so I was like, do I need to stay in the shadows? Do I need to walk slowly? Like, how do I survive this scenario? And so I think that was one of the more intense ones because I didn't know exactly what the genre was. I just heard it was good. And so I remember being like really playing cautiously and being concerned.
Oh, sweet. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. I think there's a bunch of scary games out there for us to play now. I mean, we have Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, Amnesia, Dark Descent, Slender, the 8 Pages, Slender, The Arrival, Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth, Alan Wake, and then also BioShock Original, if you haven't played it.
Yeah.
So.
I've been calling it Bay of Pigs the whole time. Oh my god.
What is it, Machine of Pigs?
Yeah.
You misinformed me.
I love Nine Inch Nails. What can I say?
I thought it was based on Beowulf.
Yeah, it's a machine for pigs.
Okay,
so.
Machine for Pigs. Cool.
What do you
Yeah.
think pigs use machines for?
And that's actually the most recent
You'll
one that
find
came
out.
out. That was on my birthday, 9/10. So
I'm really
fun
excited.
stuff. Well, anyways, guys, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time. And have a wonderful evening.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and feel free to take a look at our website, www.ultimategamedb.com, and subscribe to our channel. We would love to see you there.
Definitely also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you like us or follow us, you'll be able to see when we're posting new shows and also a lot of articles. The Ultimate Game Database posts a lot of stuff on what games are coming out that week, how the consoles are doing on the console wars, a lot of fascinating stuff.
Yeah, so subscribe, like us, tweet us, and we will see you next week. Bye!